Okay.
Okay.
Live, a little live button came up in the corner.
Yeah, I think I got a little live button too, so I think here we are. Hi.
Oh, how are you?
I'm well. I first of all, I love the banner that you have hanging behind you.
Thank you.
Did you get that for a book tour?
Yeah, I got it for the book tour, and I've been using it everywhere I go when I have the book with me.
That's awesome. So for those of you who are just tuning in, my name is Kristin Russo. I'm the co-founder of My Kid is Gay. Happy National Coming Out Day. And we're here today to do something really fun. It's the first time we've done anything like this with My Kid is Gay. We have Laurin Mayeno here with us. And Laurin has written so many pieces for My Kid is Gay and also runs Out Proud Families. And Laurin, I'll let you talk about Out Proud Families, but I just want to read just a bit of the mission of the work that you're doing over there. It says, Out Proud Families was started by the proud mom of a gender-expansive gay son. We provide resources for families and caregivers raising children and youth of diverse gender identities, gender expressions, and sexual orientations. And on top of all of that work, you also just released a book, which is called One of a Kind Like Me, or Unico Como Yo.
Yes.
Did I get it all?
You got it, yes.
So congratulations on the book.
Thank you. It's been a long labor of love. More than 5 years.
Oh, I'm sure. So tell us, let's start with the book. Let's talk about the book first. There's so many aspects of the book that I want to talk about, but first let's just start with the story itself. Do you want to tell them a little bit about the story and about where the story came from?
Okay, so should I tell the true story first?
Sure, you can start wherever you want. Follow your heart.
So the true story is I am the mother of a son. He's now 27, almost 28 years old. But when he was a little boy, when he was almost 4 years old, he was what was, I don't think they had words like gender expansive and gender creative back then. Somebody called him a non-traditional boy, is what somebody told me he was, but he loved ponies and unicorns and princesses and dressing up and pink and purple and sparkly things. And at that time, there really wasn't a lot of support for families like ours, and I didn't know what to make of all of this. And so I was actually pretty confused. And then right before Halloween, about this time, 24 years ago, I asked him what he wanted to be for Halloween. And he said he wanted to be a princess. So all of this stuff just started going through my head in the split second of, you know, people are going to mess with him, people are going to judge me, what kind of reaction would his relatives have, his family have? His father had died before he was born, and so I was really trying to raise him in a way that would make his father proud, and I was afraid that his father's family wouldn't be comfortable. So just all these things were going on right there in the fabric store in my head when he said he wanted to be a princess. And I said to him, this was my escape valve, or what I thought was a way out. I said, well, wouldn't you like to be Peter Pan instead? And he said, no, I want to be a princess. And it was this moment of truth where I had to make a choice between supporting him and letting him be who he was and trying to push him or pressure him into a gender box. And at that moment, I decided I had to support him. And so I did. And we went and bought this fancy dress and cut it down to size just for him. And it had to be purple because purple is and was his favorite color. And he ended up having a really great Halloween. He doesn't remember it. It wasn't a big deal for him. He was supported. He was loved. And nobody gave him a hard time. That was the true story.
Wow. So, and also it came to my attention that the whole time I was introducing you, I hadn't had my camera on. So hi everyone for the first time. But I put it on. We're here now. That's an incredible story. And this is how many years ago did you say, Laurin?
That's 24 years ago.
24 years ago, and I came out to my mom about 17 years ago. So we're on very similar tracks here. But I have to say that, hearing your story and how you handled that, especially 24 years ago, is really impressive. And so I wonder, can you share anything with parents who might be watching this, who might be in a position like you were 24 years ago, who are struggling with some of the same questions you had? How did you get to that place where you were able to get to a supportive place so quickly with it?
Well, I would say that I supported him somewhat. I don't know if conditionally is the right word, but I wasn't 100%, yeah, go, just be who you are. I'm so proud of you. That took years. But some of the things that made a difference, one of the key things at that particular moment was I called the preschool director because I was worried that kids were going to give him a hard time, or maybe even the parents were going to give him a hard time. And I told him, look, this is happening. He's going to be a princess. And she said, you're not the only parent who has a child like this. There's other little boys who like to dress up and put on jewelry and all that. And she said it's just a perfectly normal part of him exploring who he is. And that was important because, first of all, I knew I wasn't the only one. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times parents feel like they're the only one going through this because they don't know other people that are going through these things, right? And it was also important because up until then, I was like, is he normal? Is there something wrong with him? Am I doing something wrong as his mother? And, just all these doubts and fears about all the terrible things that could happen to him. And so the reassurance that it was just a normal part of his growth and development was also really, really helpful at that time. And then I have to say that I'm really lucky that I have a really supportive family and friends. And there were very few people that gave us a lot of negativity. Mm-hmm. So that made it possible. And then much later, when I started learning more about gender and started getting educated, I realized, that the whole gender box thing is really a problem for all of us. And that gender is much more diverse than either or, boy or girl, man or woman. And so another thing that was really important for me is getting that kind of education and seeing that, even though our culture stigmatizes people who don't follow the rules of gender expectations, that it's actually very natural and beautiful and something to be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And, something you said about when you were first beginning answering that question was about not feeling alone. And I do think that, so much of the work that I do and the work that you do is to reach out and sort of remedy exactly that. And we're at a time, 24 years ago when you were in that store and 17 years ago when I came out to my mom, we didn't have, the internet as we know it now. And I think that so much of that presence is helping both people who are coming out and also parents and family members to better understand that they aren't alone. Like before they even get the information that might help them understand their child, it's like just that one thing, just knowing they aren't the only ones, I think is huge. And maybe that's a good segue to talk a little bit about your work outside of the book. And we'll certainly come back to the book because I have more questions. But, you are working so hard on promoting the book, but you've also started an organization called Out Proud Families. And so I would love to hear about that from you. And I'm certainly getting the sense of where it was inspired from, but I would love to hear from you when that started and when in your journey you decided, I'm going to take things into my own hands and I'm going to provide these resources myself.
Yeah, sure. So about 9 years ago, one of my best friends, her name is Nina, She is from El Salvador, as was Danny's dad. And her son came out. And Danny was already pretty much out as well. And she was, she speaks English, but her primary language is Spanish. And she was struggling with some stuff around understanding bisexuality, understanding how to navigate a family where there's a lot of very religious beliefs that are not necessarily supportive.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't see support for her, for Latino families or Latinx families, as we're now saying.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that we were going to start a support group. From there, it just grew into a mission, and we have been, we created an organization called Somos Familia, and it focuses primarily on supporting families in the Latinx community that have LGBTQ children. And it has lasted for 9 years. We now have a staff person, we have a bunch of volunteers, a bunch of committees, a bunch of people doing really, really good work. And as we were doing this work, focused in the Latinx community, I started to feel like, wow, this is really important and powerful work. And I'm an independent consultant. That's how I make my money, supporting nonprofits. And I decided at some point, you know what, I want this to be really focused on building. And I want to also be able to tell my story as a mixed race woman and reach out to other mixed race families and families of color. And so I started Out Proud Families. It's not exactly an organization, it's just me, but it's a resource. You can look at it as a resource. I have a website, and I have been gathering all these videos and all these different resources that are focusing mostly on families of color and mixed race families. And I also have developed a bunch of different videos of telling my story, which have been in many different countries and reached thousands of people. And my hope is, if just one person gets helped by my videos, then I'm making a huge difference. And then lastly, I do a lot of education. I do workshops for schools and preschools and families and young people to really support people in understanding gender diversity and to help families get to the point where we don't even wait until our kids come out. We're already there before that's even part of the conversation.
Yeah, I love that last, I love everything that you said, but especially that last bit, so much of the work that I do. By the way, I give you full permission, if you want to, calling it an organization, since my kid is gay and everyone is gay. Is usually just about 2 to 3 of us over here doing that work, but I still call it an organization.
Okay. An organization of one with a lot of supporters and collaborators.
Exactly. But yeah, I think a lot of the work that I do, I need to get a fun banner like you, but I do have a copy of the book that we wrote called This is a Book for Parents of Gay Kids. And in this book, I often say this, I cover up the bottom, because I feel like this is a book for parents, and that's what you're saying too, is that you don't have to have a gay kid or a trans kid or a gender expansive kid to read this book or to read your book or to familiarize yourself, A, with information, and B, provide your children resources that show many versions of humans and many versions of families, because you don't know who your kids are. You won't know who they might become, and even if they don't come out themselves, the chances that they'll at least have friends who are LGBTQ are very, very high. And at the end of
the family, something else in the family. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love that, and I just think that that's something that's very important, especially on a day like today, where it's National Coming Out Day, and that certainly centers those of us who are, coming out or have come out And for, I think, both you and I, we also center parents and families who have their own process. And so I want to ask you a question about your son. I want to know, you've written this book. It tells this story that you just shared with us. And I wonder, what have your conversations with him been like? How has that conversation been? How is it for you both to have this story out there now for everyone to read?
So I can't exactly speak for him, but I can say that since I started doing this work, he's been really supportive. And one of the things that he says made a huge difference for him, he's a member of the New York City, or he has been a member of the New York City Dance Chorus for, I think, 3 years. I lose count. And the first time I did a video, I do these little short, like 5 minutes videos, and I'd share them on the internet and stuff. And the first one I did, he shared it with the members of the chorus. And the reaction that he got was so positive and affirming. And it really, I think, helped him understand how important this work is. And he has, been really, really generous in letting me share all these personal details about our lives and his life. He's been really generous about coaching me. He's a great writer. He edits and gives me really critical and great feedback on all the blog posts I write and everything. And we're right now trying to set it up so that I can go visit the chorus when I'm in New York and say hello to everybody and give them an opportunity to check out the book too.
Oh, that would be so nice.
Yeah, so he's really, he sees it as my work. It's not his work. And he's very much about, you need to tell your story, not my story, because you have your own story as a parent. And parents need to know what that story is. And young people need to understand that story too, because a lot of times young people are not able to really kind of get into the shoes of their parents. And so I try to help them get into their parents' shoes a little bit.
Absolutely. Has this book, have you seen it in action in, an elementary school or?
Oh my gosh. Oh, yes. So when I was in Washington, D.C., I ended up connecting with somebody who really wanted me to bring the book into their school. And I was able to speak with a group, read the book to 2 classrooms, a kindergarten and a 2nd grade classroom at the same time. And it was the first time I not only read the book, but we had a dialogue. And the questions that they just asked all these great questions, and we had a really good conversation about why it's okay for boys to wear dresses and skirts, and toys, shouldn't be for one gender. And I didn't have to prompt them. They brought up all the questions, so it was great. And then last week, the illustrator Robert U. Trujillo and I got to read the book to an entire auditorium full of children. We read it to the entire auditorium in Spanish, and then all the teachers were going to read it in their individual classrooms in English and have a conversation with the children. So it's really, even though the book is just come out, it's already getting into the schools and starting conversations with young people.
I'm so excited to hear that. I know, from having done the work that I've done in schools, which has not been in elementary schools, but I've talked to so many teachers who want these resources, who know that these are needed resources, and they really, despite how much we are seeing an increase in conversation around these things, there really is not a ton. And something that your book does, apart from being beautifully illustrated and being this beautiful story, the fact that it is in both English and Spanish is something that I don't know of any other children's book that deals with gender expression or anything like that, where the text is in both English and Spanish. Does anything else like that exist?
I don't think so. I might have seen something a couple of years ago, but I can't remember for sure. And I've seen a couple of things about children that have two same-sex parents
Mm-hmm.
in Spanish, but I haven't seen anything about gender diversity among children.
It's just
Um,
the accessibility, the level of accessibility of the text because of that is just incredible, and the amount of homes it will be able to be in, is just increased enormously by that fact. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And I want to let you know too, for those of you who are watching, if you have questions for Laurin about the book or about any of the work that she is doing or the work that I am doing, you should be able to chat with us, or chat to us, I should say, in the window to the right of the video. There's a little chat box there, and so I believe that I don't know if you have to be logged in or not, but you should be able to chat there and ask us questions if you have them. And if not, either if you don't want to ask there or if you don't see it, you can tweet at My Kids Gay. So it's without that I and is, it's MYKIDSGAY. You can tweet over there, and we'll see your questions and we'll do our best to answer them. So I just wanted to let people know how they could chat with us. But I would love to hear about your experience in, you talked a little bit about your organization. I'm just calling it an organization. It's all over.
I'll go with it.
And you are speaking with Latinx families, and I wonder, specifically, how have those conversations been, and how has it been to be not only a resource for families, but a resource for Latinx families specifically, not only in your experience and being able to share that experience, but also linguistically and speaking the language. I would love to hear more about that.
Right. Yeah. So it's a little confusing because I have more than one hat. So one of my hats is Somos Familia, which is the organization I co-founded with my friend Medina. Now has several members, activists, volunteers, as well as a full-time staff person named Maritza.
Amazing.
And we do a lot of talking with families in preschools, in community organizations. And so the language issue. The language is very difficult because for people that know Spanish, most of the words are gendered.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, there is no, at least I haven't been able to figure out a word that's gender neutral for child. Like niña or niño. And so you can add the X and say niñex.
Right.
But most people don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So then you have to explain, why are you saying niño, niña, and niñex instead of just using niños, which formally speaking, if you say niños, then you're talking, it's inclusive of everybody of all genders, but it's really more masculine. Right. And so there's a lot of difficulty in sort of just the gendering of the language. And then it's also hard because there's terms that are really difficult to translate, like gender expansive and queer, and that don't necessarily have really exact translations that are also understandable by people.
Right, of course.
Yeah. So those are some of the challenges with the language, but I have to say that doing this work has been really eye-opening for me. There is definitely a stereotype about people in the Latinx community being more homophobic than everybody else, and I think that stereotype is, is grounded in sort of this idea that everybody in the Latinx community is probably Catholic as part of it. But my experience with the community has been, just like any community, there are people that are more open, and there are people that are less open, and there are people that have had more exposure to different ideas and people that have less exposure to different ideas. And that once you have a conversation with people who are open to having a conversation, you can have just the greatest conversation. And that I think a universal is that, I can't say for all families, but for across cultures, people love their children, you know, and people want what's best for their children. And so that love is something that overcomes a lot of the conditioning that we've gotten culturally about gender and about sexual orientation.
Absolutely.
To overcome it.
Yeah, and so today we released over at My Kid is Gay, we released an e-care package called Coming Out with Care that has a bunch of materials for families, for parents specifically when their child comes out to them. And part of that care package, and if you're watching this, I will tell you how to find it, but part of that care package is a playlist that a friend of mine, Brittany Nichols, who's a writer and an actor, she curated this playlist for parents to listen to help them feel supportive and inspired to make change in the world. And something that she said, because she titled it Stay Up, and I asked her why she had called it Stay Up. And she said for a bunch of reasons, obviously like staying up, staying positive, things like that. But what really resonated with me was that she said, another thing I wanted to harken back to was when your child was small, when your child was a baby, an infant, and you had to stay up with them. And when they were awake and they needed you, you had to be there.
Right.
They were small, they needed you, you had to do this. Even if you were tired, even if you didn't want to get up, you had to. And she used that to draw a parallel to the sustained effort that it is to learn and to engage with your child. And it comes from exactly what you're saying, right? It comes from this place of love that many families have that are built on this, this unconditional love that helps them sustain this effort, continue to learn, continue to grow. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing, and a beautiful thing to talk about too, National Coming Out Day. Oh, and if you're, I said, I'll tell you where to find it. If you are looking for that care package, you just go to, first of all, it's all over our social media accounts. So any My Kids Gay, Facebook, Twitter, the site, you can find it in all those places. But there's also a bit.ly that I'll put a link in this YouTube event so that you can find that care package. And Laurin will add all of the links that you want to add below to Somos Familias, to Out Proud Families, to the book. And I want to ask you too, about the tour. Can you tell me about the book tour? What is that looking like? Did it happen already? Is it happening now?
Well, I think that maybe I took your advice and decided not to do a billion cities.
glad we could do that and let you know. Oh, take a break.
So I did a couple cities,
Mm-hmm.
then came back here. I'll do some more cities later. So we started out in Washington, D.C., and we did a really lovely launch event there, collaborated with some of the local organizations who were really wonderfully supportive, and also got to do the thing I mentioned in the school there, and also something with young people that were part of a program with Whitman Walker Health Center. And then we went on to Toronto and did another book launch at a bookstore there, collaborating with a group called Latino American Queer Education Project. Mm-hmm. And we also did a workshop on how to talk with your children and families about gender diversity. And so
awesome. Where did you get, because now you're imparting knowledge, and of course, I mean, maybe you're similar to me and all of that knowledge just came from like lived experience and such, but where, you said that you didn't have the terms 24 years ago. Gender expansive was not part of our vocabulary. So tell us a little bit about that journey, right? How did you find those words? When did you find them? And what were your resources, 24 years ago, but also 10 years ago as you were unpacking all of this?
Yeah. So many. I'm sure you've heard about the Family Acceptance Project.
Yeah.
is really important research that shows that basically, I don't want to oversimplify it, but basically that if families are more accepting of their children, that this actually protects their children's health and well-being. Mm-hmm. And that sometimes families, when they think they're protecting their children by trying to change them or trying to change their expression, they're actually harming their children because their children internalize that, and it leads to a lot of problems and feelings of rejection. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of the things. That study came out around the same time that Somos Familia was formed. So it was very informative for us when we started the organization. And then, you know, when we started doing education in the community, we had to get educated first. And so people in the LGBT community educated us around gender diversity and sexual orientation. And from there, you know, there's just been so many people that I've learned from. I try to, as much as possible, keep up with people in the community that write and talk about their experiences, because I want to be informed. And I know that, you know, just because I'm the parent of a gay son doesn't make me well informed and make me automatically sensitive. And so I try to learn as much as I can. And I also just try to get feedback. When I write something, I try to get feedback from other people that have lived experiences in areas that I don't, so that I can make sure that I'm, you know, reflecting the messages that are going to be the most helpful. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I have to say, it is so incredible to know that parents like you exist in the world. Obviously, you know, we started this conversation with you saying, you know, I was supportive, but not as supportive as I am able to be now. Back then, it was a process. And I think that that's really important. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit more about that process. But what I want to touch on is that you, you know, you were just talking about how there's studies that show, I mean, you know, I don't think that we even, maybe you and I don't even need to see those studies. We've lived these things. We probably could tell, but that studies have been done that really show that that acceptance can be so powerful. And from a personal standpoint too, you know, I had a lot of pushback from my mom when I came out, and that was difficult for me for all the reasons that you're saying, but it also made it really, really hard for me to understand myself because, and I've talked about this a little bit here and there, but when I said I'm bisexual and she said, no, you're not, I spent the majority of, you know, 6, 7, 8 years just fighting that, just saying like, you say no, I say yes.
Right.
And, you know, and then after that time had passed and finally, you know, we were starting to get to a better place, I sort of had to look back at what I had been saying and think, is this how I identify? Because like, I hadn't had any room to explore it on my own. And I think that's another reason why it's really important for parents, family members and caregivers to give that space, because on the other end, as the child, as the LGBTQ person, it gives us space to explore what we're even feeling, because it is, you know, these things are fluid for a lot of us and they are new and confusing, and that space and support offers so much.
Yes. You made me think of a couple things. Let me see if I can remember what they are. So one of them is that I think is a really important message that I've gotten from the Family Acceptance Project, is that when we talk to parents who are not quite where we might want them to be, the conversation doesn't necessarily need to be, you have to accept your child. Or you have to change your beliefs in some way. The conversation can be, if you change some behaviors that are harmful to your child, this can make a huge difference in your child's well-being. So if you stop trying to change your child, mm-hmm. or stop trying to force your child to dress or appear differently. Those things can actually make a difference, even if you're not ready to change your fundamental belief system. So that's one thing that I've learned from the Family Acceptance Project.
Yeah.
And then the thing you said about giving people space, before you come out to other people, this is one of the things that I'm starting to learn, is that people go through their own process of coming out to themselves. They are. And if you don't have the space to do that because of all the pressures that you're facing from everyone around you, it just makes it really, really hard to do that. And one of the things that happened with my child is that I suspected he might be gay for many years. I mean, he was a princess for Halloween, right, when he was 4. But we actually didn't acknowledge until the summer after high school that he was gay between us, because number one, I very strongly believe that it was important not to make assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
Gender expression does not equal sexual orientation, right?
I'm snapping over here for you.
Number 2, oh my gosh, I hope I didn't lose my train of thought. He needed space. He needed space to figure things out for himself. And I asked him about it afterwards. I said, would it have been better if I had talked to you and asked you, are you gay?
Right.
And maybe in some children's cases it would have been. But in my son's case, he said, I appreciated the fact that you just gave me space.
Mm-hmm.
He was out to his friends long before he was out to me. He was part of the Gay Straight Alliance at school. And even though he was in the Gay Straight Alliance at middle school, I still didn't assume he was gay.
That's great.
I mean, but he knew that I was okay if he was. I let him know how I felt in general without being specifically, I'm okay with you being gay. He knew I was okay in general.
Right, which is, and that's, that's something that we talk a lot about at My Kid is Gay, and in the book too, is that ability that you have as a parent to send that message without it being direct. I've talked to so many people whose parents have asked them, not knowing, they didn't talk to you or me before they did it. They didn't know that they maybe shouldn't have asked, and so they ask, and actually that young person has, in the face of that question, said no automatically, and then feels this even bigger weight of, now not only do I have to come out, but now I feel like I've lied. Now I feel like I've, been in that moment, I said the wrong thing. So I think it's really powerful that you were able to give him that space. And it does sound like he was super, super appreciative of it. But it's a lot. And what you're talking about too is the process for you as a parent, the coming out process. And we've done a lot of talking about that, but I think it's important for parents, if you're a parent and you're watching this, knowing, remembering what Laurin is saying and what my own mom would echo, which is the place you start from is certainly not the place you'll be in several years. It's as much as it is a process for the person coming out, it's a process for the parent, for the family member.
Yeah, and parents, I actually have a blog post that I posted today in honor of National Coming Out Day, which was for young people who are thinking of coming out, to help them understand a little bit that their parents go through a process. And so I think the message for both young people and parents, caregivers, whoever's raising that young person is there's thinking about like what it took for you to get you as a young LGBT person. You didn't just like one day wake up and say, I'm gay or I'm bisexual or I'm trans or whatever it is. It took a while for you to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And so parents sometimes have to go through a process of figuring it out. And their first reaction if they react negatively at first, it doesn't mean that that's where they're going to end up. And so that's one of the things that I try to help young people understand is, is even if it doesn't seem really good at the beginning, it could get there over time. And another thing that I think it's really important for young people to know is, regardless of how your parents or caregivers or family members respond to you, you are beautiful, you are perfect, you are just part of the beautiful diversity that is our human family. And if anybody tells you anything different than that, don't believe it, because it's not true. And I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of young people, is getting all those negative messages and internalizing them.
Absolutely.
I know easier said than done, but it's just not true. Try not to believe it, and try not to take it in.
Well, and that message coming from you, I think, is really powerful as a parent. And we'll put a link to that blog post specifically in the video so that you can check it out. I can't tell you how meaningful it is to me to have this conversation with you as well. I think it's incredible, the work that you do, the work that you have done and continue to do. The fact that, not only are you making yourself a resource for the many parents and families who have questions, who for them it's day one, but that now also you've taken that experience and you've made it into a resource that is going to help young people also feel that they can express themselves how they want and that they aren't the only ones. So I just really want to thank you so much for that, for all the work you've done for My Kid is Gay too, and sharing your voice with us there. And before we wrap up, I want to make sure that we've talked about everything that you want to talk about. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, or that I haven't asked, that you'd like to touch on?
Well, one thing that I think is so important, because this is National Coming Out Day, right? One thing I think is so important is for young people to know that you don't have to come out if you're not ready. And that, the coming out process can be different for each person. And it is yours. It is nobody else's. So whatever you choose, there's no right or wrong way. It's really what you think is the best for you. And your safety is really important, and you're being able to be who you are in the world are really important. And sometimes it's hard to have both of those at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I just want to send out a lot of love to any young people that are listening that may be struggling with, do I come out or not? And just to know that there are people out here that love and are thinking about you and care about you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, to parents too, who are watching, it's okay to have questions. It's okay to stumble and trip. And I think, Laurin, what you're saying too about that coming out moment, whether it happens in a super casual way, in an easy way, in a difficult way, it's really step one. And knowing that is really important. But I echo everything that you've said. If you are struggling with coming out and you are not ready, no one is shaming you, and if they are, they don't count, right? Because you have to do it on your terms. And something that I want to touch on too before we're done that you mentioned was that your son had come out to a bunch of friends before you, and I think that's really important to think about too for parents. If you're watching this and maybe your child hasn't come out to you yet, but you are wondering, don't take it personally if they do come out to people before they come out to you, because I know for myself and for a lot of people, coming out to our parents, the people that we love and are, you know, so close to, that's a really hard thing to do. And so I know for me, and maybe Laurin, for your son as well, it's sort of like you're testing the waters, you're practicing this, you're sort of trying it on for size before you're ready to take that step and come out to your parent or family member.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think the most important thing for parents, if your kid comes out to you, is, even if, you know, for some parents it's like, yay, great, now it's finally official. But for other parents, if it's hard for you to hear that news, two things. One is, do what you need to take care of yourself and go through your process, but don't do it with your kid. Right?
I'm snapping again.
Find someone else to process with, and let your kid know, even if you're not ready to be 100%, I embrace this fully, let your kid know that you love them no matter what.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for all of the work that you do. And happy National Coming Out Day. Will you let them, I'm going to put links below, but will you just let them know where they can find out more information about your work, about the book, you know, and where they can follow you?
Yes. So this is the book. It's called One of a Kind Like Me, and it's also called Unico Como Yo in Spanish. And the easiest way to find it right now is just go to oneofakindlikeme.com. I have a page just dedicated to this book, and it has all kinds of information, including where to order it, and it will also have a resource guide. It's not there yet, but it will soon be up there, a resource guide for educators and families.
Awesome.
And then for my other resources, just outproudfamilies.com, and I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm not on all those other things yet, like Instagram and stuff, but someday I'll be there.
There's only so much we can all do at one time, right?
Yeah.
So much. That's wonderful. And you know, we will put all those links down below in the video. Feel free to comment. We'll be checking the video as well if you have comments after the fact. Laurin, thank you again so much for being with us today and for all the work that you do. And I hope that you have a really beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you, and thanks so much for this opportunity and for all of your partnership. It's been great.
Of course. I look forward to meeting you in real life someday very soon.
I know. It will happen.
It will happen. All right. Thank you again. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.